Good morning. Okay, so I got some good feedback that I went a little too fast yesterday. So, for two things. First, I apologize for going faster than I normally would because I was trying to make up some time. But thank you for letting me know. So I will try to go more slowly. And if I'm going too fast, just wave or jump up and down or holler or whatever. And then I'll try to slow down some more. Yesterday, Sophie really talked about a lot of the qualities and some of the communication techniques that I think are important when you're doing interviewing of clients. I have some more thoughts about it, but many of them are similar to what she said. And I think, in a way, you can summarize it by the sort of saying that you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So treat your clients like you would want to be treated if you were a client. That, I think, in a nutshell, captures it. And another, she was talking about female clients in particular and said, we want to know who these women are and what brought them into the situation that they're in now. And I think that's true of all clients, not just female clients. That's what you really want to know. Who are these people and how did they get where they are now? And that means to me another quality that you need to have is curiosity. The questions are, not just what does the client have to say, but who is this person? How did they get into this situation? Okay, so can somebody describe to me what you see in these photographs?
Thank you. I see children crying.
Children crying. Okay, anybody else?
I'm seeing the hopeless mom there.
Okay, hopeless. Looks of hopelessness, right? I think that's right. I mean, and what do you feel when you look at these pictures? How do you feel?
Thank you. I feel compassion for them.
Compassion. Okay, anybody else? Use the microphone, please. Thank you.
Umva ugize emotion, ukumva ugize imbabazi kureba abantu bameze kuriya.
Okay.
Njye numva ngize amatsiko yo kumenya icyatumye buri wese muri bariya agira umubabaro n'agahinda bigeze hariya.
Okay, excellent. I mean, I think that's right. You want to know what's going on, what's wrong with these people, why do they look like that, and you feel compassion for them because you can see that they all look like they're in some type of pain, right? And the reason I show this slide and ask those questions is that I think it shows how important relationships are in life in general, and it's true in relations with our clients too. There's some research that shows that about 87% of our brain function is directed at relationships with other people. And that's why we have language, that's why we have facial expressions, that they're all relevant to the way we relate to other people. So it's true, and you need to view interviewing your clients as a job responsibility and a job task, but you also have to view them as human interaction. And a key to any relationship is trust. So who has participated in an interview of a client, a job interview, any type of interview? Just raise your hand if you've done that. Okay, let me ask you, what type of interview was it?
We conduct interview in the criminal cases and also in the commercial matters.
Oh, so you interviewed a client?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you view that interview? What did you see as the purpose of the interview?
Getting more information that you could use in the defending or assisting the client.
Okay. And yours? What type of interview was it?
Me, I was interviewed while I was applying for a job. That is one. Two, I have interviewed also client in some cases.
Of course, I think everybody's probably
Yeah,
interviewed
yeah.
clients, right? So the job interview, how did you view that? What did you see as the purpose of that interview?
The first thing in a job interview, it is you create a kind of impression among the interviewers. On the first insight, you try to convince by seeing you, by your identification, you impress the panel.
Okay. So this was kind of interesting because in one case we had the interviewer and he was expressing his view of the purpose of the interview, and you were the person being interviewed. So you looked at it from that perspective. So I think the point is that all interviews are reciprocal, right? Both people are involved in the interview and both people have reactions to what's going on. And the client is always going to be thinking, who is this person? What can this person do for me? Can I trust this person? And so it's really incredibly important initially and throughout the relationship with the client to establish trust. And there are a number, I think, of ways of doing that. Sophie talked about at least two of them yesterday. One is you have to respect the client as a human being and talk to them in a respectful way. Another one is that you have to not judge them. And I'm going to talk more about some of these later. You have to try to identify and meet some of the client's needs. What do they expect? What do they want from you? What needs can you meet within the bounds of your professional ethics? And one suggestion I have is in the first meeting, tell the client something that you're going to do for them, and then do it. You have to follow through. Anytime in the relationship you tell them you're going to do something, then you have to do it. Because if you don't do it, they're going to lose faith and trust in you. How many people take notes when you're interviewing your client? You can just raise your hand. Okay. And it's a good idea when you do that to ask permission to do it and explain why you're doing it. Because sometimes people think when you're talking to them and you're taking notes, they're concerned about what you're writing down, why you're writing it down, and to tell them, ask them if it's okay if you do it and that you're doing it because you want to record information that's important to him or her as the client and you as the attorney. It also shows respect for the client. Okay, so this is, well, in English, it's an acronym. It probably doesn't translate necessarily to French or Rwanda, but it's ORS, and the O. There are four elements to it, and the O is for open-ended questions. The A is for affirming or affirmations. The R is for reflection, and the S is for summarizing. And I'm going to go through each step. So open-ended questions, I mean, I think probably you know what open-ended questions are, but they generally start with who, what, when, how, and they leave the person you're asking the question to the opportunity to give an expansive answer, a narrative answer, as opposed to a yes or no. So if I say to you, what did you do yesterday? That's an open-ended question because you can tell me 20 things that you did yesterday. But if I say to you, yesterday you ate breakfast, that's a closed-ended question because pretty much you're going to answer yes or no. And the reason that it's important to ask open-ended questions are these. You get meaningful answers because people can speak in a narrative or expansive fashion. It lets their experiences come out. It also shows them that you have time to talk. If you ask short, close-ended questions, it seems like you're in a rush to finish and get out. And the third one is not a reason to ask them, but it doesn't really have to be in the form of a question, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So this is a question that I think I'm going to talk a little bit about some particular questions that it might be helpful to ask, and this is one of them. So I would like everybody in the audience to think right now about the earliest memory you have, the first memory you have from your life. And can somebody tell me what it is? What memory are you thinking of right now? It's okay. There's no wrong answers.
I remember the house where I was grown up. I remember the shape, the inside the house. I'm seeing that.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I remember my first day to the school, to school,
Okay. And what was that like?
because where I started my studies, my school, it was not allowed to go with shoes. Then I left my shoes at home and
Oh,
went to
okay.
school.
Okay. 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 So that's interesting, and I think if you start asking this question, you'll get a lot of different answers. But it will not be unusual that you'll get answers very different than those answers, right? I learned a lot of this from a person who was an investigator in a federal public defender office, and he really does a terrific job on it, at his work. And after I learned about asking this question, I asked a client this question. And it was a young woman, and she said to me, "I remember the police and the emergency vehicles coming to our house. They were arresting my father, and they were taking my mother to the hospital because she had been so badly beaten." Okay, that's a very, very different answer than these answers. And it tells you a lot about the experience of this client's life. So some other things I think that it's helpful to ask clients is, what do they expect from you and from the court process? Often our clients don't understand the process, they don't really understand your role, and it's important to let them know that so that they're comfortable with it and they can participate in it with you. Some other questions that are helpful to ask are, what led you to be in this situation? How did you get to the point where you are today? That could be about the particular crime, or it could be broader than that. It could be experiences in their lives that got them to that point. What should a judge, or this has jury on it because we have jury trials in the US, but what should a judge or jury know about you? What would it be important for you as the client to have the judge know? This doesn't mean necessarily that you would use the information you get in the answer, but it's helpful because it tells you something about where the client is and what they think is important to them. What would people be surprised to know about you? This is another question you wouldn't necessarily use, although you might, but it will teach you something important about the client. How was affection shown in your family? You can get a wide variety of answers to this question, some which demonstrate that there was no affection shown at all, some which demonstrate that affection was shown in what would be considered not a normal way by some type of abuse or whatever. Tell me something that you're really good at. Now, this I think is more about trial skills, but this question, if you have, do you have sentencing hearings here? Anybody? Do you have a hearing before the client is sentenced? No? No, okay. No, I wouldn't worry so much about this question. That goes more towards sentencing. So this is another communication technique that you might want to consider. So sometimes, I said earlier, you don't even have to ask a question, or it doesn't have to be in the form of a question. And this is probably something that you do often when you're communicating with other people, and you can use it with your clients as well. So the client gives you an answer, and then you say, when that happened, and you just stop. And the natural inclination of all of us as humans is we will want to fill in that blank. When you say, when that happened to you, the client will then start talking about what happened next. When your mother hit you, you just pause and let the client finish it. After that, you went and you stop. This is the pause technique. Tell you something and you say, and then just let them fill it in. This is very open-ended, like I said earlier, and it gives them the chance to answer the questions in an expansive way. And then another thing is to reflect back to the client. So the client says that his brother is a monk. You repeat it back. And there are a couple of reasons for doing this. One is it tells the client that you're listening. Number two, it gives the client the opportunity to correct you if you misunderstood something. You've been homeless all your life. Same thing. These are all examples of the same thing. You're reflecting back what the client said. And as I said, it tells them that you're listening. It also gives them an opportunity to expand on it if you think there's more information that you would like to have. Okay, so the second letter in this ORS was A, and that's affirmations. And that's basically affirming what the client is saying or feeling without judging them. And you might want to find out how they feel. They tell you something, but they don't express any feeling about it. And it's a situation where you know they probably had some kind of intense feeling. How did that make you feel? What was it like? This is where you want to get more information from the client. So this is the picture that I showed at the beginning, and people said that, you know, basically they saw people crying, they saw people who were in pain. And this is not unusual in my experience, and I'm sure yours from some comments I heard yesterday, that our clients experience a lot of pain in their lives. And sometimes so much that it's difficult for them to talk about it. So I think there are two things that are important. One is you have to develop a relationship with them before they may be willing to talk about some subjects. And so you can't push them too early to talk about issues in their lives that are painful. If they're not ready to talk about it at the beginning, then it's fine to, instead of saying, I need this information for the case, and pushing them to say, okay, if they say, you know, I really don't want to talk about that, okay, I appreciate you letting me know what you're comfortable with, and move on to something else. And as you have other meetings with the client and the relationship develops and they have more trust, you can come back to that topic. So Sophie talked about having compassion and empathy, and a couple of people mentioned that this morning, that they had compassion for the people in the photographs. And I think both of these qualities are incredibly important with our clients. There's an author, his name is Miller Williams, and he wrote a book called The Ways We Touch. And I just want to read a quote from it. He wrote, have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What appears conceit, cynicism, or bad manners is always a sign of things no ears have heard and no eyes have seen. You do not know wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone. So basically he's saying what I think some people said yesterday when Sophie was talking, is that, you know, you haven't walked in your client's shoes. You don't know what your client's life was like. You don't know what impact it had on them. And so you have to have compassion and empathy for them and not judge them. And it can be difficult for us not to judge. I mean, as humans, we tend almost immediately to judge people by what they say, what they do, what they wear. But this Buddhist monk has this saying that understanding means throwing away all your knowledge. And that's not letting your knowledge and your experience influence the way you perceive your client and his life and her circumstances. This is a technique, I think, that is helpful in not judging, in remaining curious, and in working to get more information from your client in a way that develops trust. So it's stop, drop, and roll. And I'll talk about each one. So the first one is the client. Let me go back. First one is stop. The client says something and you find yourself ready to judge them about it. Don't. Don't think this person is terrible, what this person did is terrible. Think, how did this person get to be in this situation? Why would this person have done this? Let me get more information from this person about why this happened. And that's the drop part of it. You drop into curiosity. And that's when you ask yourself these, and ask the client these questions. How did you get into this situation? What brought you to this point in your life? And the role is, I really talked about this a little bit just a minute ago, that's rolling with resistance. If your client is resistant to talking about an issue, doesn't want to give you certain information, they're not ready yet. The relationship hasn't developed to the point where they have the trust and the confidence in you that they're going to give you that information. That's okay. If you had that experience with a friend in your life, you wouldn't push them and push them and push them to tell you. You would let it develop as it would over time, and that's what you really need to do with the client too. Just say, okay, I understand you're not ready to talk about that. Let's move on to something else. That's the role. So some other questions you can ask, particularly when you get to issues that you might start to judge on, like let's say drug use. Instead of asking a question that reflects your judgment, you can say, help me to understand. Help me understand why you use drugs. Help me to understand why you stole this from such and such a person. It's a gentle way, it's a non-judgmental way to ask the question and get the information that you want. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Here. Explain this more? Okay. He asked me to explain this a little bit more. So what I was saying was, if you get an answer from a client and you find yourself starting to judge them in some way, a negative way usually, stop. Don't judge them. Then that's when you drop into curiosity. So in your head, say, okay, I'm not going to judge. Let me find out why they did this, why they're in this situation. That's dropping into curiosity. So you would say, help me understand why. Explain to me why. And then the role is, if they're very resistant, if they're not ready to talk about this yet, okay, step back and say, okay, I appreciate you letting me know you don't want to talk about this. We'll talk about something else. And then maybe in the next meeting, when you've developed more trust, you come back to that topic. Okay, so the R of the 4 letters is reflect or reflections. And this is pretty simple. It's really just, I talked about it a little bit earlier. It's reflecting back to the client what they said to you, right? And the reason there are several reasons for doing it. So you mirror their comments. You paraphrase back to them. You say back to them what they said to you. So there are several reasons for doing it. One is, again, it shows the client that you're listening. And active listening, like Sophie talked about yesterday, is incredibly important. You can't be thinking every moment about what you have to do next or later in the day and hurry through the interview. You have to be present in this interview with the client and pay attention actively. They can correct you if you get it wrong. So it's a good way for you to check that your information that you're recording, if you're writing it down, is accurate. It also allows them to feel that you are working with them as partners in a legal process, as opposed to you working individually. So the summarize is, this is towards if you're talking about a particular topic with the client, when you get to sort of the end of that topic, summarize to them what you understood the conversation to be. And this is similar to reflection, but it's at the end of a topic. And this allows you to make sure that you understood the conversation accurately.